Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. Hey, you guys, welcome to the show. If we haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, training everyone that sits at the 504 IEP table to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. We're so glad you're here. We certainly want you to get this amazing book that's coming out in just a few months. It is the Epic IEP. It is the exact framework that I use to serve families for the last 25 plus years, in a book that's applicable for parents, educators, and advocates navigating the special education process. It's going to be an invaluable resource to you. However you sit at the table, get one for you and get one for somebody that would benefit from it. Just go over to the great Amazon, order the book, The Epic IEP, come back to the epic-iep.com and put in your information, and that will release $500 worth of bonuses for all of you that pre-order. We cannot wait for you to get this amazing resource. So, question of the day, concern of the day is, when we had the pandemic in 2020, it just seems like it wasn't that long ago. Many of our services were remote, right? The actual special education services, the actual general ed services, related service, and instructional services in the IEP, because we weren't there. We weren't at the schools. These schools were closed. And so there's been much guidance from states on that and from OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs. We have a little bit of this, not a little bit, a lot of this sort of turning into a modality or requirement that districts, counties, and cities are telling parents at IEP meetings that they have to accept their related or instructional services remote, and that fulfills their obligation. So let's kind of dial back to what I always train on, the federal law. So you need to get the federal law book because it's how we do everything good and right in special education. So you can get that on our bookshelf at specialeducationacademy.com so that you know that what your rights are in the federal law and how to articulate them in a meeting. But under 300.324 in the federal code, 34 CFR, volume 2 of 4, IDEA's exact words. So the requirement, it appears in 300.320, and then it stipulates each of the child's IEP must contain. And part of that is a statement of the special education and related services and supplementary aids and services based on peer-reviewed research to the extent practical to provide to the child or on behalf of the child, and a statement of the program modifications or supports for school personnel that will be provided to enable the child to, 1, to advance appropriately towards attaining the annual goals, 2, be involved in and make progress in the general education curriculum, not necessarily the setting, but the general education curriculum in accordance with paragraph of this section, to participate in extracurricular and non-academic activities, and 3, to be educated and participate with other children with disabilities and non-disabled children in activities described in this section. So that's 300.324, C is in cat, 4 is in the number 4, 300.320, C, and then 4, okay? So that is the federal law, the requirement under IDEA. So there has been, we get contacted all day long, every day. We serve clients all over the nation because all of our IEPs are remote and virtual. And we're hearing from families, the families that we serve, our team partners that serve team kiddos nationally, and myself, that the district is solely providing the option of a related or instructional service remotely. So let's kind of talk about what that means. So before, you say no to a service or no to a setting, I want to tease out what that actually looks like. There might be a remote related or instructional service that would be just fine if we did it, virtually. There might be a setting that you could set up in a school if a student had counseling as a related service, and they could be in a private setting and solely were on a computer like we are right now. And that could be, that's a possibility that could be done effectual, right? Now, if part of that counseling as a related service is also attached to social skills, that would be hard to do. So when they're proposing this related or instructional service to be remote, have them describe what that is. And what we found out is that when we start to describe it, that there's another person involved. And so what do I mean by that? So related services are speech and language services, audiological services, interpreting services, psychological services, physical and occupational services, recreation, therapeutic, counseling is a related service, rehabilitation counseling, orientation mobility, medical services for diagnostic and evaluation purposes, school health services, school nursing services, social work, and parent counseling. And that's not an exhaustive list, but that's a list of what you might find as common related or instructional services in your school setting in your IEP. And so when I am in these meetings, I will ask, so you're the occupational therapist and you're on a screen, correct? And you're zooming into the child's classroom, correct? So a couple of things. First of all, I would say on your schedule of service, it will say that service is one of two things. It's direct or it's consult. Consult is a related or instructional service. That consult time is for the other adults, right? The other team members. Direct is to the student. And then it has more specificity. It'll say direct group or direct individual. So I'll say to the school, so you're going to log on and zoom in with Billy. Where will Billy be? Is he just in the middle of his third grade class? Is he in an assembly? Where is he, right? Where are we going to set this up for that to be successful? Well, what you will know is that they'll require another adult to be with Billy, right? And so I was talking to a speech pathologist and I said, so how are you doing this? And she said, I would do the same speech therapy with this child, but I would have a para in the room, handing him things, directing him to things, and supporting me. And so that's not the model that it was agreed upon, right? We didn't agree to a speech pathologist delivering services and then the speech pathologist directing the paraprofessional to hand him stuff, to provide him, materials, and to direct him to the materials they're working on. And so for me, that's not the needed related service that we agreed upon, nor is it what's listed on the schedule of services. Additionally, love paraprofessionals, love them. If it's before November 5th, 2023, jump on our paraprofessional training. You can log on for that free webinar. Just sign up at specialeducationacademy.com. Paraprofessionals are amazing, but they're not used in the direct service of a related service or instructional services. And so you get many other people involved who may be completely good-hearted, but they're not speech pathologists, right? They're not trained in orientation and mobility. They're not trained in, social skills. They're not trained in, occupational therapy and sensory, occupational therapy and fine motor. So for me, when you add that other person in, it's concerning. Additionally, as it relates to evaluations, even more concerning. So I've had people tell me that they're doing a full FIE remote. They're doing a full individualized evaluation remote. I'm like, so you're the psychologist. How do you, provide these protocols, which are only allowed to be seen by you as the person that can implement them and deliver them and score them? And she said, I am having a paraprofessional put items in front of him and then time his answers. And so for me, it just moves outside of the expectation and delivery of the service. Am I completely opposed to it forever? No, I certainly know that there are some settings that that's what we need to do right now. But as a replacement permanently for a related service, I'm not going to let my clients agree to that. That was not the intention of related services and instructional services under IDEA. I certainly appreciate that we had the pandemic and that was our current option. But while school districts are open and we are not under the pandemic or any other national outage, we would want those services delivered with their original intent, directly and in person. I had a situation the other day with a child who is deaf and hard of hearing. He has been homebound for, I think, 8 years. He's in high school now. He has Langer-Gideon syndrome. He has many other conditions. And so he's been homebound. And the school district was offering an interpreter over Zoom. So here's the problem with interpreting over Zoom. Zoom, there is a lag, right? There is a lag. And so you have a child that's receiving instruction and there's an interpreter. And so we didn't agree to that. And the leader in the IEP meeting, the executive director of special education, she said in the meeting, if you think I'm hiring a full-time interpreter for one student, you're wrong. That's what she said, which would be a problem because IDA doesn't say you have to have this many disabled kids to provide that related service. So when you're in those conversations, just sort of tease out the conversation. I always use the TED acronym, right? Tell me what that looks like. Explain what you would do. Describe how that would be the way that we collect data on IEP goals and or instructional pieces. And if you don't have that information, you need to pause and figure out a different way to do it. So just consider all those factors and decide if this delivery of service for remote would be appropriate for this time or not. Okay. All right. So let's get to our questions. I'm a parent of a child with autism and ADHD. Do you provide services for IEP meetings? We do. I'm currently under much pressure because the school has violated my rights and my son's rights. And he does have an IEP, and I'm just now finding out a little bit more about my rights and my son's rights. I've watched your videos and they're very helpful, but I need someone to stand up for me and to protect my son. He has another meeting this week. He also has an MDR, a manifestation determination resolution meeting. They are putting my son in DAEP for 60 school days with no transportation to or from DAEP. They predetermined his punishment before I could even speak. I just don't know how to prove it. He got in trouble at school because he had a substitute teacher, and the class was really loud. My son had a meltdown and started throwing desks, laptops, and started striking another student in class with a pencil and punching him. My son is 13, so the other parents filed assault with bodily injury on him. I'm not sure where to start because I live in this area and it's a bit harder to find civil rights lawyers. If you do not provide services, can you please steer me in the right direction? Thank you for your time. So kind of let's unpack this. So when we have kiddos that have behavior needs, first things first, and I'm going to answer your questions, but kind of coach you along the way. If you have a child that has impulsive behaviors or behaviors that impede his learning or learning of others, make sure under the section that says student code of conduct and behavior that you've captured there's a history of that. If he has those, make sure that he has a BIP, a behavior intervention plan. So when there's a student that has an action that requires a discipline response, it can go really quickly, right? So there is the hearing, they call it the hearing to look at the action, but then the MDR is a manifestation determined resolution meeting. So what does that mean? We're having a meeting to ask two questions. Number one, is the behavior action a cause or related to the characteristics of the student's disability? It doesn't mean that it has to have happened before, but is there a probability as we sit here as team members and we could consider and see that that could be a characteristic of his disability? Second question is, was the behavior a cause of the school's failure to implement the IEP? So for me, if either one of those questions are yes, then we would look at our response for disciplinary action, either greatly lessened or not at all. And those are several moving pieces. And we have a training on the Epic IEP Academy that we have every Monday night. So all of our past trainings are saved in the dashboard, and you could look at all of them. And there's a series on manifestation determination resolution meetings, but that might be a good way to get you some information on that. When you come to a meeting, you need to have, as the parent, all the information. Does he take medicine? What are the medicines for? How long has he been in the care of a counselor? Does he see a psychiatrist? Has this ever happened at home? Did this happen at dad's house? Did it happen over the summer? Have we ever seen it? So that you can have those supporting pieces that the school may or may not have in that moment when they make the decision. So DAEP is District Alternative Education Placement. So they're putting him in there for 60 school days with no transportation. So when the district decides that a student should participate in DAEP, it's absolutely the obligation of the district to provide transportation if transportation was already in his IEP. And additionally, because you're changing the location, then they would also have to provide transportation. One of the things that I would ask at that meeting is, will his IEP be implemented with fidelity? So if I have an IEP and I have in-class support for math, science, and social studies, I have OT for sensory, I have music therapy, I have assistive technology and written expression. All of those minutes, just how it's outlined on the IEP, must be delivered in DAEP. So wherever the child goes, the IEP has to be implemented, whether it's in school suspension, out of school placement, like they're doing DAEP, the criminal justice system, the IEP still has to be implemented. So often when I'm having those conversations, the school-based members will say, well, no, Karen, we can't do all of those services at DAEP, but they'll come back when he comes back to the campus. And I will say, no, you either implement the IEP or you've denied him FAPE. And so often that's mitigated the decision of the district to have such a long disciplinary action or change it to maybe in-school suspension. Okay. He got in trouble. She sort of describes that. My son is 13, so the other parents filed assault with bodily injury on him. So again, once your child is 10 in a public school, the police can get involved. And certainly the school has no say about whether a parent files with the local law enforcement entity. But hopefully that there'll be a very less response if you actually do go to court, because he is a 13-year-old minor. So she is asking, where do I start? She lives in a county. It's hard to find civil rights lawyers. So if you have to go before, your family court in your county, advocates don't help with that. Do you need an attorney to go to the court in your county? That would be a decision. That would be a family attorney. As it relates to IEP meetings, I certainly would suggest, if you can, to get representation so that when you do get back to having an IEP meeting, talking about if you had an MDR, the school has to do an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, and that we tighten up the IEP to either get the student more services, more appropriate services, maybe even counseling as a related service, so that when he's in these moments, we teach him skills that he can draw on to communicate verbally rather than with these behavioral responses. So this person is calling the questions from Texas. So in Texas, we have a list of advocates and we have a list of attorneys. You could just email inquire@spedtex.org. So that's INQUIRE at SPEDTEX.org. And the state of Texas, the Texas Education Agency, will provide you that list of attorneys in the state of Texas and advocates in the state of Texas that help families with kids with disabilities. They obviously don't, those people on those lists, I'm on that list, they don't work for the state. They are just a resource for parents should they need those resources. Okay. Next question. Just looking for some advice. I guess I should say trying to remain calm. My son, who is 9 and diagnosed with DMDD, ADHD, and Tourette's, was threatened very unfairly at school by a teacher. My son has a new tic that forces him to spit. He's trying to stop, but unfortunately, these tics are uncomfortable and cause him sometimes pain and give him anxiety about how others will react. Today, while waiting for his aftercare bus to get from school, the teacher assigned to him and the other kids decided that he was going to repeatedly tell my son to stop spitting. My son told him that it was a tic and to leave him alone. The teacher got mad and grabbed my son's upper arm hard and pulled him a good distance away from the other students and said to him, his tic was sending him to detention. Whew. We're meeting with the school tomorrow in hopes to see the video footage. Am I overreacting? Should the teacher grab him his arm and pull him away from another student for a disability he can't control? And the school is aware of the tic because this week a classmate of my son was written up for bullying my son about the spitting tic. I'm just hurt that someone who is supposed to be a role model for my children, a teacher, should make my son feel unsafe at school, has hurt him emotionally and physically. So first of all, I'm so sorry that that happened. So Tourette's is a very real OHI, other health impairment, that impacts students, and you would need an IEP if you have that. So first resources, I would reach out to TAA.org, Tourette's Association of America.org. They're an amazing national entity. They have great resources. They can even provide in-person training at your school district free of charge for Tourette's. It is a lifetime disability that comes with so many challenges that those children or adults have to overcome. Often people still think the manifestation of Tourette's, whether it's a physical tic, a verbal tic, is a choice. And kids spend a lot of time trying to, like you said, hold it in, which is not healthy. And we need to have better knowledge for schools about Tourette's and how it presents in kiddos. So first, I would ask, reach out to TAA and ask for their, whatever state you're in, their state chapter to see if they could come do training for your school district. Your school district would have to accept it, but definitely sit down and go back to the IEP table and let's look at a way to stop this from going forward. No child wants to have a disability, and no child wants to have a disability that everybody else knows about. So that would be my first step in getting this rectified. Next question. Paraprofessional seminar you had, I missed it. Is there any way I can get the video? I'm confused about a lot of stuff that I do and would love to watch that training again. So we are having another paraprofessional training. It will be November 5th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Central. So if you're hearing this and it's before then, just go to specialeducationacademy.com and get registered for that. I think that we're probably going to have the paraprofessional webinar every month. It's our most popular webinar, and people have so many questions. So I will train in the webinar. We will give you all the documents from the ECR, the Electronic Federal Code on Paraprofessionals, highly qualified teachers, certified special education teachers. We'll give you the information from NCLB and ESSA, No Child Left Behind, and then its reenactment to Every Student Succeeds Act. We will give you information from all people so that you'll understand the paraprofessionals' unbelievably important role, their descriptions, their obligations, their duties, and more importantly, their limitations. We are saddened to see that schools often are literally saying that they use a para model to deliver special education and related services. And that's heartbreaking, but more importantly, it's a denial of faith for kids with disabilities. So we will see you on that next paraprofessional webinar. We'll have one once a month. If you've missed it, just email us at advocate@Special Education Academy, and we will get you signed up for the next live webinar. Next question. Good evening. I came across your feeds and wanted to try to reach out. I have a 12-year-old in middle school. The other day, him and a group of boys were pantsing each other in class. When my child did it, he pulled down both sets of clothing on accident. The school wants him to go to an alternative school. This is the first offense ever. He's never been in trouble. He's in all gifted classes and makes A's and B's. The principal gave us an ultimatum: sign a waiver for 45 days or go to a tribunal. And he's going to push for 90 days. I don't know if going to the tribunal and letting us tell our side and explain that he's a good kid will help at all. I mean, just the other week, a kid made a rape list and was only suspended for a few days. I'm thinking because his relative is a teacher at the school, we just don't know what to do. Sign the waiver and do 45 days or go to the tribunal and tell him he's a good kid. He's never gotten in trouble. He makes all A's and B's and he's in gifted classes. He just made a mistake. It really makes us mad at the response from the school. So I'm sorry that that happened. You know, the phrase kids will be kids is true, right? Children are children, and you know, children model other children. And in a moment he made a mistake. I think that I would, and I'm not giving you advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not, you're not my client. But from one mama to another, I would try to sit down with whoever's making this decision. I assume the principal, and ask if what is the lowest barrier to interrupting his education that we could do in response that would work for all parties. I don't know that telling somebody that they're a good kid, because this is not a good kid issue. This is just something that happened. And I know that in moments, these responses feel very linear, and it is an accident what happened. And obviously the consequence for kiddos, I assume it's so that they don't make the same mistake again, but I would look for the least amount of impact on his education to get this rectified. Next question. Are all IEP minutes supposed to be delivered by a certified teacher, or can a para do push-in minutes to fulfill them? So that's a good question. So it depends on a couple of things. So on the schedule of services page, there are in-class support minutes. So like for purposes of this question, let's say that you have 100 minutes in math, 100 minutes in reading, 100 minutes in science, and 100 minutes in social studies. If you have a math and a reading goal, those in-class support minutes have to be delivered by a special educator. They have to. If those minutes are not tied to an IEP goal, depending on the level of certification for that para, there might be some wiggle room, right? And so the in-class support, is it tied to specially designed instruction? So in the present levels, we have a critical area of need that always will have a corresponding service. It doesn't necessarily always have an IEP goal. So in those instances, like say for social studies and math, and you did, social studies and science, and you didn't have an IEP goal, we would assume that those minutes are not to work on an IEP goal, but to, provide the student redirection, help him get focused, maybe help him get lined up to go to small group for testing. There's different parameters around that. But ICS minutes in class support are to be delivered by a special educator. There might be some liberty in your state around the statutes if that special educator comes into the room once a week. But know that paraprofessionals are to work under the, in quotation marks, not my words, it's what's in the law, in quotation marks, direct supervision. I don't know how we debate that, but people want to debate that. So for me, when a child's getting special education minutes, is because we know that he needs those minutes, or he won't be successful. So just make sure that in your document, it's pristine who is going to deliver those minutes and what are those minutes for, especially if it's not tied to a goal. What are those minutes for? There's a reason that they said he needed 100 minutes in science and social studies. Maybe it's because the impact of his reading obviously impacts him in science and social studies. So maybe tease that out more in the IEP and then ask what those in-class support minutes are for. If those in-class support minutes are for specially designed instruction because he has deficits in reading and science and social studies, then you and I know that specially designed instruction, here's how you know what it is. It's special, it's designed, and it's instruction. So that at minimum has to be done first by a certified credentialed special educator. Could then the paraprofessional replicate what you've done? Absolutely. If there is supervision, if there is close proximity and frequent proximity to the teacher. What we're seeing a lot, which might be what's going on with your kiddo, is that for all 180 days in the year, there's never been a special educator. So when I'm in a meeting, I will say, who is the special educator delivering the science and social studies in class support minutes? And they will say, Bob Smith is paraprofessional. And I will say, who is the special educator over these minutes? And they will say, it's the case manager, Karen. We have a case manager. Okay. And I will say to the case manager, Cindy, how many minutes a week do you go into his class for science? None. How many minutes a week do you go in his class for social studies? None. How many times have you ever given him instruction in science or social studies? Never. And so what we're finding is that case managers who have, I don't know, something crazy, 30, 40, 65 kids on their caseload are doing all the IEP meetings, all the paperwork. And then that paraprofessional comes down the hall and they talk about the paperwork. And while there's nothing wrong with that, that's not specially designed instruction. You looking at my paperwork is not specially designed instruction. You giving me tips on how to work with him, but you've never worked with him, is never going to be specially designed instruction. And so for those pieces, we need to make sure that what is being delivered meets the minutes required to fulfill the IEP. All right, question. I have a question. I'm a paraprofessional in a special education classroom, but we don't have a special education teacher. We don't have a special education teacher. We have 4 resource teachers who all seem to want to do nothing with helping us for more than a single period of day, which leaves 3 to 4 hours of gaps per day. One of our students is nonverbal, autistic, and has a very rare disability. The student is violent, hurting himself, attacks us, and sometimes attempts to attack others. I or another para are left alone with him every single day, and it feels unsafe at times. What are my rights? Can the student be suspended for attacking me or other students? I'm almost at the point that I don't even want to continue working with this student when we have virtually zero teacher support. And so this is the magnified problem that comes, right? So first, you must have a teacher of record in the self-contained class the entire day. I don't know how we get confused about this. I just don't. If we have part of the day where there's no instruction, well, then certainly that special education teacher wouldn't be in there. But the special education teacher is a teacher of record. They lay out the management of the class. A resource teacher or another teacher from somewhere else, which we hear that teachers are popping in. IDEA doesn't say anything about popping in, and nor could you just jump into a class, even if it's for a whole period of day, and understand the student's unique circumstances or the other students. First, I would go to your principal and say that currently it's unsafe in the classroom as it is staffed. When will we expect that to change? And then based on their answer, you'll have to make a decision about, is that a safe place for you to work? Can the student be suspended for attacking me or the other students? The problem is we've denied that student FAPE, right? I don't want anybody hurting anybody anywhere, but we've denied him FAPE because his IEP can't be delivered because there's not a special educator in the classroom. So all of it's a mess. And certainly I wouldn't want to work in any situation where I'm not supported by my boss. And so this is not an advocate teacher issue. This is a leadership issue. Your leadership understands fully their obligations under the law. Nobody's confused. HR understands. The superintendent understands. If they choose to violate their obligations and put you in harm, I think that, they're the ones that are walking in and participating in educator misconduct. So in writing, I would ask for your needs to be met to the principal, and then based on their response, I would go from there. Somebody asked, can I file a complaint about what's happening in my classroom that's not staffed? I wouldn't recommend that. I would never recommend that if you want to keep your job, right? Unfortunately, it would be great if teachers could self-report. It doesn't usually go very well from what I'm told. Probably 3/4 of the people that I train are actually school-based members because they want the training. I would love to tell you that their school says, not a problem, Karen, we'll take care of that. I often find that they're moved or removed or told to shh. So, and that doesn't fix a problem. So it's a bit of a mess that we have going on right now in special education. Next question. My 3-year-old is autistic and they want her in general education because the district got rid of their mild to moderate preschool. She's not potty trained and they say that they will call me every time she needs a diaper change. Otherwise she can't go. Can they do this? So a couple of things. Preschool is different than ECSC. So preschool is a product that some districts have, not every district. And then ECSC is a special education product. So early childhood special education are for students that have a profound speech impairment at minimum and need special education services in 3, 4, and 5 years old. When we talk about general ed, there's no general ed requirement in America for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So if a child needs to have hygiene or toileting or diapering needs done during the instructional day, the school delivers that, whether your child's 3 or 22. So no, we don't have parents come to the school to provide a personal care service for students at the school. Next question. We had an evaluation for my son with the school, but they also want him assessed at the daycare as well. Is that a good thing? So, I mean, if that is where he spends, his school day right now in a daycare, I don't have a problem with that. If they're going to collect information from his teachers and the providers at the daycare, I think that would be valuable information as we're looking at the totality of his needs. Next question. My daughter, who I only have temporary custody of due to a CPS case, and after 9 years of fighting parents, needs to be tested. I was told because there's no social or birth certificate on file, how can I proceed? I can't get it appropriately because I can't get the social security card, and now my child is missing out on services. So I've never heard of you needing a child's social security card. If a child's in school, whether you're the foster parent, the surrogate parent, you have temporary custody, they're a student in the school district. So if we need testing, then we provide testing. It's not stopped because somebody doesn't have a social security card. Next question. Can you help me? My daughter has an IEP and I am in Oklahoma. We can help you. So we advocate nationally, and all of our clients are remote. All of our IEP meetings are remote. We do them back to back to back. Last Friday, I had 6 IEP meetings starting on the East Coast and finishing up at 6 p.m. in San Francisco. And so we follow the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and they do all of their hearings via Zoom, and as we've all been doing since March of 2020. So if you need help for your child that has an IEP or a 504 or a records review, just email us. We have a team of full-time advocates at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. Okay. Next question. Are IEP minutes supposed to be delivered by a certified teacher? Yes, IEP minutes are supposed to be delivered by a teacher of record that has the correct credentialing. And we'll talk about this in the para webinar, November 5th, 2025. If you're hearing this later, we have one once a month. It's very clear in the law about credentialed teachers. I will share with you all the documents, all the guidance, where it is in the federal law and the 300 codes and the 200 codes. Unfortunately, people at school, or probably in any business, are trained by somebody else in the business, and they may not be getting the correct totality of the information of the expectation under the federal law and state law. So we'll provide you that. All right. Next question. Would you have any recommendations on an advocate for a freshman in high school who has missed out on lots of education opportunities in Texas? I would. So we have a team of advocates. If you need an advocate, and then you can get an advocate, I would do that. Even if you just got an advocate to do a records review. What's a records review, Karen? So we get opening documents from our clients, which are the last 3 years records, IEP documents, progress reports, any important emails, any dojos or text messages back and forth, any evaluations, inside, outside, those sorts of things. And then we review those documents. We do a Zoom review with our client. We walk through what, if we were in the IEP meeting, what recommendations and considerations and next steps we would have, whether it's new testing, more information in the present levels, adjustments, additions, deletions of IEP goals, appropriate and needed accommodations, a real conversation around LRE, and a schedule of services that will help this child progress. And so often that's all parents need to get a better purview. But parents are usually not the most informed person at an IEP meeting, and they're going into a school and there's all of these school-based members, and it's very short and quick, and we talk in acronyms: PCS, IHP, ESY, BIP, FBA. Do you have any questions? And parents just kind of look at the school-based members, kind of gloss over and go, no. Because in schools, as an advocate in schools, we all talk a certain language that parents don't. And so I think it's a really good way to sort of dip into getting an advocate, just to make sure that the IEP is correct for their child. Somebody always asks, when's a good time to get an advocate? When you have a child with a disability, right? If you were selling your house, if I was selling my house and I said, hey, you guys, I got a realtor, nobody would go, oh, why'd you get a realtor to sell your house? You know why? Because that's not what I do for a living. So when you get an advocate, it's somebody that does that for a living, and they look at IEPs and understand what is right and good and needs to be adjusted so that the student makes progress. And so highly recommend that if you can get a records review for just your documents to see if we're all headed in the right place, do that. And you can get our access to our team by just emailing us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. Next question. I would really like to know what I have to do in regards to ADHD and a 504. Admin denying hyper focusing as a manifestation. They want to put him in an alternate school with no previous behavior issues. Please help. So here's the problem with a 504. There's no education in a 504. There's no instructional minutes. There's no IEP goal. We're not mitigating anything. You know, in special education, which is an IEP, not a 504, we have one deficit and one skill, right? We have IEP goals. I've got a deficit. I'm teaching a skill. A 504, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, was a civil rights act for individuals with disabilities in America, period, right? Obviously, during the school years, it's called the 504, but the same law applies if you are, an adult and 35 years old and you work at Amazon, right? So same law, you cannot be discriminated and denied your needed accommodations based on your disability. And so I think there's a very big push for parents to get a 504 or 504. I mean, you don't want to be an IEP. You don't want that in his record. And then we get into these situations where it sounds like your son certainly needs goals to work on, and certainly so we can mitigate that. So um, it's tough when these situations happen behaviorally because they happen so quick. But either way, whether you agree or disagree at the manifestation determination resolution meeting, which can happen in a 504 or an IEP, that the next legal requirement period is that the school immediately does an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, and talks about a behavior plan, which can exist under a 504 or an IEP. But my long-term recommendation would be that you get full testing for special education related services and have a robust IEP to help him make progress in light of his circumstances. Next question. My son's ESE coordinator wants to move my son from an IEP to a 504 because he does not have any educational goals. He has an IEP under OHI for being visually impaired. He also has ADHD and extreme ADHD. Can they legally take away his IEP and give him a 504? Can I stick with an IEP? So if you have a visual impairment, that's an eligibility under IDEA. ADHD is an eligibility under OHI under IDEA. So if you're in need of instruction and services, which you would be if you've had a visual impairment, then you would need to stay with the IEP. Okay. Next question. Oh, it just says thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you guys. We love serving you in the best way that we can. And so anything that you ever need from us, just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. Again, the EPIC IEP is coming out in just a few short months. And so for those of you that go and pre-order the EPIC IEP, a powerful playbook for parents, educators, and advocates navigating the special education process, this book is going to change your life. It's written for all of us. At the end of every chapter, we have checklists for parents, checklists for educators, checklists for advocates. And it really is the 7-part process that I personally use, teach, and train on every client that I've ever served and every person that I've ever trained to be an advocate. And so it's an amazing work. It's going to change your life. Get one for you, get one for another family that needs it. You can go to Amazon, order your book, come back to the epic-iep.com, put in your information that you ordered the book, and then that will release pre-order bonuses for you guys that pre-order. You like bonuses, don't you? So we do. So we love you guys. If you need anything, let us know. Remember, we get it right for the child. We get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys in the next training. Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.